The wolf should have frozen before sunrise. Its silver fur had disappeared beneath a blanket of fresh snow, and only the edge of a faded blue scarf broke the endless white stretching across the frozen valley. Each breath escaped its muzzle in weak clouds that vanished almost as quickly as they appeared, stolen by the sharp mountain wind. The forest stood silent around it, as though every towering pine had stopped breathing to witness the lonely struggle between life and winter. The young woman who found it had nothing worth giving. No gold. No warm home. No family waiting beside a glowing fire. Only a small bundle of herbs gathered before dawn, and the scarf wrapped around her own shoulders, the one thing standing between her and the freezing cold. She never expected to see the wolf again after laying that scarf across its trembling body. But 3 mornings later, the same wolf returned. Its silver coat gleamed beneath the pale winter sun. Its wounds had vanished. Around its neck rested a heavy collar of black iron, marked with the ancient crest of the Alpha King, a symbol spoken of only in old fireside stories, a mark no ordinary wolf could ever wear. Why would the ruler's most feared guardian bow its head before an unknown village girl? Why had the wolves begun watching her cottage from the darkness between the trees? And what forgotten promise had awakened beneath the snow the moment compassion became stronger than fear? Winter ruled the kingdom of Ashenvale with quiet cruelty. It did not roar like a storm every day. Instead, it settled over the land with patient certainty, wrapping forests, rivers, and lonely villages beneath endless layers of snow until the world itself seemed to forget the colors of spring. Smoke drifted lazily from crooked stone chimneys before disappearing into a sky as pale as old silver. Narrow roads vanished beneath frozen drifts. Wooden fences leaned beneath heavy blankets of ice, and every sound carried farther than it should in the cold air. Beyond the last farming village stretched frostpine forest. Older than the kingdom itself. Older than the oldest castle standing beneath the northern mountains. The villagers rarely entered its depths. Children grew up hearing stories whispered beside fireplaces while flames crackled against the long winter nights. Stories of wolves larger than horses. Of glowing eyes watching through snowstorms. Of an unseen king who ruled not from a throne of stone, but from forests where no human footsteps remained for long. Most people laughed politely at such tales during daylight. Few laughed after sunset. On the edge of the village, where the trees began reclaiming the fields, stood a tiny cottage built from rough timber darkened by countless winters. Its roof sagged beneath fresh snow. Its windows were small. Its chimney crooked. Yet every morning before the first hint of sunrise, warm light appeared inside. That light belonged to Elara. She lived alone. Not because she wished to. Life had simply carried everyone she loved away one season after another until silence became her closest companion. Her parents had been healers. They taught her that every leaf carried a purpose. Every flower bloomed for someone. Every wound deserved gentle hands. Even after they were gone, she continued gathering herbs from the forest, drying roots above the fireplace, and brewing simple medicines for anyone who knocked upon her door. Most villagers could never afford to pay. She never asked them to. Sometimes they left a loaf of bread. Sometimes a handful of carrots. Sometimes nothing at all except grateful smiles. Those smiles were enough. Long before dawn touched the snowy hills, Elara wrapped herself in her thick blue wool scarf and stepped outside carrying a woven basket across her arm. The cold bit immediately. It slipped beneath her sleeves. It stung her cheeks until they turned rosy. Her boots crunched softly over fresh snow while her breath drifted behind her like pale smoke. The village still slept. Only the distant bark of a shepherd's dog disturbed the morning silence. She crossed the frozen fields and entered Frostpine Forest just as the first grey light filtered through the towering evergreens. Snow rested upon every branch. The slightest breeze sent glittering crystals drifting lazily through the air like tiny stars falling from heaven. The forest smelled of pine resin, frozen earth, and clean winter air. Beautiful. Peaceful. Dangerous. Elara knew where the healing herbs survived beneath the snow. Tiny evergreen plants clung stubbornly beside sheltered rocks. Certain roots remained alive beneath thick layers of frost if one knew exactly where to dig. She moved carefully between ancient trees, gently brushing snow away with gloved fingers before placing each precious plant inside her basket. Birdsong slowly awakened overhead. A squirrel darted across a fallen log. Somewhere farther away came the faint tapping of a woodpecker searching for insects hidden beneath bark. The forest never truly slept. It simply breathed differently with every season. Hours passed quietly. Her basket slowly filled. The sun climbed higher behind thin clouds, though little warmth reached the forest floor. Ilara knelt beside a narrow stream whose water still flowed beneath sheets of broken ice. She reached toward a cluster of winter moss growing between two stones. Then she froze. Not from the cold. From the sound. A weak whimper. So faint she almost believed the wind had imagined it. She remained perfectly still. Again. A soft cry drifted through the trees. Pain. Loneliness. Desperation. Setting down her basket, Ilara followed the sound deeper into the forest. Low branches tugged gently at her cloak. Snow reached almost to her knees. The cries grew weaker with every step. Until finally, she saw him. A young silver wolf lay beside the frozen stream where the icy bank had collapsed beneath its weight. Its fur shimmered even beneath layers of snow, but the beauty only made its condition more heartbreaking. One hind leg twisted awkwardly beneath its body. Small cuts marked its shoulder. Ice clung to its whiskers. Its chest rose and fell in shallow, uneven breaths. Golden eyes opened just enough to look toward her. Not with anger. Not with hunger. Only exhaustion. For one endless moment neither of them moved. The forest itself seemed to wait. Ilara slowly lowered herself onto one knee. "It's all right," she whispered, her voice barely louder than the wind. "I won't hurt you." The wolf did not growl. It lacked the strength. Its breathing shivered harder instead. She looked around carefully. No mother wolf. No pack. Only endless snow stretching between silent trees. Carefully she removed one glove and reached forward. Her fingertips hovered for a heartbeat before touching the thick silver fur along its neck. The wolf flinched. Not away from her. Toward her warmth. Its eyes slowly closed. A small breath escaped its muzzle. Ilara's heart tightened. "You've been alone," she murmured. She examined the injured leg as gently as she could. Nothing appeared broken. Only badly strained. The cuts looked shallow, perhaps caused by jagged ice or hidden rocks beneath the snow. Those wounds would heal. The cold would not wait that long. She looked toward the fading daylight filtering through the trees. If darkness came before the wolf found shelter, it would never wake again. Ilara searched her basket. A handful of dried herbs. Some bandages. A tiny flask of pine resin salve. She cleaned the cuts with melted snow and carefully spread the healing mixture across the wounds. The wolf never snapped. Never pulled away. Its breathing steadied little by little beneath her gentle hands. Still, it continued trembling. Only then did Ilara understand. The animal was not dying from its injuries. It was freezing. She wrapped her own arms around herself. The wind cut through her coat immediately. Without the scarf around her neck, the cold felt sharper than a knife. She stared at the faded blue wool in her hands. It had belonged to her mother. The last gift she had ever received. Every winter since childhood, that scarf had kept her warm. For several long heartbeats she simply held it. Then she smiled softly to herself. "What good is warmth," she whispered into the silent forest, "if it belongs only to me?" She leaned forward. Slowly, carefully, she wrapped the scarf around the wolf's shoulders, tucking the fabric beneath its body to keep the wind away. The silver wolf opened its eyes once more. This time they did not look empty. They shimmered with quiet surprise. Ilara gently stroked the space between its ears before standing. "You don't owe me anything," she said with a tired smile. "Just live." She picked up her basket and turned toward home, forcing herself not to look back. The cold struck harder with every step now that her neck was bare. The wind slipped beneath her collar until every breath burned. Her hands trembled despite the gloves. Yet somehow, her heart felt warmer than it had all winter. High above the forest floor, hidden among snow-covered cliffs where no human eyes ever wandered, enormous white wolves watched her disappear between the trees. None made a sound. None moved. At their center stood one far larger than the rest. His silver eyes followed the young woman until she vanished from sight. Only then did the great wolf slowly lower his head. And somewhere deep beneath the frozen mountains, where ancient stone had slept for centuries, something long forgotten quietly awakened. 3 days passed. The snow never stopped falling. Some mornings it drifted gently through the air like white feathers. Other days the wind drove it across the hills in long silver waves that erased every footprint within minutes. The world beyond Ilara's little cottage seemed quieter than before, as though winter itself had paused to listen for something hidden beneath the silence. Life continued much as it always had. She visited an elderly shepherd whose cough had worsened with the cold, leaving behind a small jar of pine root medicine on his table before refusing the few copper coins he tried to press into her hand. She gathered herbs wherever the frost allowed them to grow. She mended the roof where snow had begun to leak through the old wood. At night she sat beside the fireplace, warming a cup of wild berry tea while the empty chair across from her remained untouched. Yet something had changed. The forest felt awake. Birds that usually scattered at the first sign of danger lingered quietly among the branches whenever she walked beneath them. The deer no longer fled as quickly. Even the wind carried an odd stillness, as though unseen eyes followed every step she took. Twice she stopped walking because she was certain she had heard padded footsteps behind her. Each time she turned. Nothing. Only rows of ancient pines standing beneath heavy snow. Only drifting flakes sparkling in pale morning light. Only silence. By the third morning, the fire inside her cottage had nearly burned itself into glowing embers when she woke before sunrise. The room felt colder than usual. She pulled a blanket tighter around her shoulders and reached for another piece of firewood. That was when she heard it. A soft crunch. Then another. Footsteps. Not human. Slow. Steady. Circling the cottage. Ilara remained perfectly still. The footsteps continued outside. One. Then another. Then many. The sound never hurried. Never scratched against the walls. Never growled. Only circled. Her heartbeat quickened. She quietly lifted the iron poker beside the fireplace, not because she believed it would protect her from wolves, but because empty hands somehow felt foolish. The footsteps stopped. Silence settled over everything. Even the wind disappeared. After several long moments, curiosity overcame fear. She wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, unlatched the wooden door, and slowly pulled it open. Cold air rushed inside. The first thing she noticed was the tracks. Large wolf prints surrounded the cottage in perfect circles. Not one. Dozens. Some enormous. Others smaller. They crossed and overlapped until the snow looked embroidered with countless paw marks. Yet the wolves themselves were gone. All except one. The silver wolf sat quietly a few steps from her doorway. Sunlight touched its fur, turning every strand into pale silver fire. It looked nothing like the dying creature she had found beside the frozen stream. Its posture was proud now. Its breathing calm. The injured leg carried its weight without hesitation. But what stole the breath from Ilara's lungs was the collar resting around its neck. Black iron. Old. Beautifully crafted. Ancient symbols circled its surface like flowing vines carved into dark stone. At the center rested the image every child in Ashenvale recognized from old tapestries and forgotten legends. A crowned wolf. The mark of the Alpha King. Stories claimed no hunter had ever survived taking such a collar. No ordinary wolf could wear one. Only those chosen by the ruler of the hidden packs. The silver wolf looked at her quietly. Then, with slow deliberate movement, it lowered its head. Not in weakness. In respect. Ilara stared in disbelief. No. She whispered to herself. This cannot be real. The wolf stepped forward. One careful step. Then another. Until it stood close enough for her to see something tucked beneath the collar. Her scarf. The faded blue wool still rested around its neck beneath the heavy iron. It had not discarded her gift. It had carried it home. Something warm settled quietly inside her chest. Without thinking, she reached out. The wolf leaned gently into her hand. Its thick fur felt healthier than before, carrying the clean scent of snow and pine. There was strength beneath that coat now. Confidence. But also gratitude. The wolf lifted its head toward her face for a single quiet moment before stepping backward again. Then it placed something into the snow between them. A crystal. No larger than the palm of her hand. Clear as mountain ice. Inside its center, faint blue light drifted like frozen mist trapped beneath glass. Tiny symbols had been carved across every surface. Their shapes resembled flowing rivers mixed with wolf tracks and twisting tree roots. Ilara knelt slowly. The crystal felt strangely warm despite the freezing air. The moment her fingers touched it, the light inside pulsed once. A soft glow spread through the carvings before fading almost immediately. She frowned. "What are you?" The wolf simply watched. It offered no answer. Only calm patience. When she looked up again, it turned toward the forest. For a heartbeat it paused, glancing back over one shoulder as though inviting her to follow. Then it disappeared between the snow-covered trees. Within seconds, it was gone. Only paw prints remained. Ilara stood in the open doorway for several moments, clutching the crystal against her coat. The forest had swallowed the wolf so completely that it almost felt as though the encounter had never happened. Only the collar's mark lingered vividly in her memory. The Alpha King's crest. The oldest symbol in the northern kingdoms. She closed the door and carried the crystal inside. As she placed it upon the wooden table, the morning sunlight touched its surface. Blue light shimmered across the room, dancing briefly along the walls before disappearing. The cottage fell silent once more. But the silence no longer felt empty. It felt like the beginning of something. By afternoon the story had spread across the village. Not because Ilara had told anyone. She had mentioned only that a healthy wolf had returned. Nothing more. But farmers had discovered the strange tracks surrounding her cottage. Hunters had measured the enormous paw prints leading into the forest. Children whispered that wolves had guarded her home throughout the night. By sunset every hearth in the village carried a different version of the tale. Some believed the wolves had marked her for death. Others insisted she had been blessed by the old spirits of Frostpine. A few laughed and dismissed everything as frightened imaginations. Only one man listened without smiling. Lord Gerrick, governor of the northern province. His fortress overlooked the valley from a steep hill of black stone, where banners bearing the royal crest snapped sharply in the icy wind. Inside the great hall, warmth filled the room from enormous fireplaces. Yet Gerrick remained wrapped in a cloak lined with wolf fur. He stood before a narrow window overlooking the snow-covered forests. His fingers rested upon the pommel of a polished sword. A servant finished recounting the village's rumors before lowering his head. "The girl lives alone, my lord." Gerrick remained silent. The wolf wore black iron around its neck. Still no answer. "And?" The servant hesitated. "They say the collar carried the ancient crest." Only then did Gerrick slowly turn. His eyes held no wonder. Only hunger. "Describe the crest." The servant swallowed. "A crowned wolf, carved in iron." The room fell deathly still. Gerrick dismissed every servant with a wave of his hand. The heavy doors closed. Only one man remained. Captain Rowan, commander of Gerrick's hunters. Scarred. Broad-shouldered. Silent. Gerrick poured himself dark wine before speaking. "For 20 years, he said quietly, "I have searched those forests." Rowan nodded. "We found nothing." "No." Gerrick's eyes narrowed. "We found bones." He stared toward Frostpine. "But now, a poor herbal girl gives warmth to a wounded wolf." He smiled. A wolf wearing the Alpha King's own mark. His smile carried no kindness. Only calculation. The old stories were true after all. Rowan folded his arms. "What are your orders?" Gerrick walked toward a large map spread across the table. His finger rested upon the deepest part of Frostpine Forest. "The hidden sanctuary exists." He tapped the map once. "And that girl has become its doorway." Outside, snow continued falling beyond the fortress walls. Inside, Gerrick's voice dropped almost to a whisper. "Watch her. Do not touch her. Not yet. If the wolves trust her." His smile returned. "They will lead us straight to their king." That same night, Ilara struggled to sleep. The crystal rested upon the small table beside her bed. Moonlight poured through the narrow window, bathing the room in pale silver. The blue light inside the crystal flickered once. Then again. She sat upright. A sound drifted from outside. Not footsteps. Not growls. A long, soft, haunting howl. Another answered. Then another. Soon dozens of voices rose together across the frozen valley. The song echoed through the mountains, deep and ancient, carrying neither anger nor warning. It sounded almost protective. Ilara stepped quietly to the window. Her breath misted the glass. At first she saw nothing. Then movement. One enormous white wolf stood beyond the edge of her garden. Another rested beside the old oak tree. Farther away, 2 grey wolves watched from a snow-covered ridge. None approached the cottage. None threatened her. They simply stood beneath the moonlight, silent guardians surrounding the lonely home of a woman who had expected nothing in return for one simple act of kindness. And far beyond them, hidden somewhere within the endless darkness of Frostpine Forest, a pair of ancient silver eyes watched over them all. The wolves did not return the following morning. Only their tracks remained, circling the cottage before disappearing toward Frostpine Forest like threads woven into an unfinished tapestry. Fresh snow had softened their edges during the night, but the path was still clear enough to follow. Ilara stood in her doorway for a long time. The crystal rested inside the pocket of her cloak, strangely warm against her heart. She should have ignored it. She should have stayed in the village where life, though difficult, still made sense. The forest held only mysteries. Mysteries had a way of changing lives forever. Yet every time she tried to return to her ordinary work, her thoughts drifted back to the silver wolf, to the ancient collar, to the quiet respect in its golden eyes, and to the strange feeling that somewhere beyond the trees, someone was waiting. By midday she packed a small satchel with dried bread, smoked fish, a waterskin, fresh bandages, and the few healing herbs she always carried. She locked her cottage door, though there was little inside worth stealing. Then she stepped into the snow and followed the fading wolf tracks north. The farther she walked, the quieter the world became. The familiar trails slowly disappeared beneath untouched drifts. Old hunting markers nailed to tree trunks became fewer until they vanished altogether. Towering pines gave way to ancient firs whose branches stretched so wide they blocked much of the pale winter sky. Snow hung from them in great white curtains. Not a single bird sang. Even the wind seemed unwilling to disturb the silence. Hours passed. The cold settled deeper into her bones. Her boots slipped across frozen roots hidden beneath the snow, and more than once she caught herself against rough tree trunks before falling. Still the tracks continued. Always just ahead. Always leading farther into lands no villager dared enter. As afternoon light softened into pale gold, she reached a narrow mountain pass. Great cliffs rose on either side, their stone walls buried beneath curtains of ice that shimmered like glass. A frozen waterfall stood before her. At first it looked like an ordinary cliff. Then the crystal inside her pocket grew warm. Warm enough to make her stop. She pulled it into her hand. The blue light sleeping inside slowly awakened. Tiny streams of light drifted beneath its surface like living stars. Without thinking, Ilara took another step. The crystal brightened. A low hum echoed through the frozen valley. Snow slipped from nearby branches. Hairline cracks spread across the frozen waterfall. The sound deepened until the ice itself began to move. With slow, ancient patience, a section of the frozen wall slid aside. Behind it lay a hidden passage. Cold air drifted outward carrying the scent of stone, pine, and something far older. Ilara stared in disbelief. No human hands could have built such a place. The entrance disappeared into darkness. She hesitated only a moment before lighting her small lantern. Its gentle flame painted warm circles against walls covered in ancient carvings. Wolves. Trees. Mountains. The moon. Human hands reaching toward animal paws. Every image flowed into the next until the entire tunnel became one endless story carved into stone. She walked slowly. Her footsteps echoed softly ahead. Drops of melting ice fell from the ceiling with quiet rhythm. The deeper she ventured, the brighter the crystal became. At last the tunnel widened. Her lantern light spilled into an enormous underground chamber. She forgot to breathe. The ceiling stretched so high it vanished into darkness. Great stone pillars surrounded the chamber like silent guardians. At its center stood an ancient shrine carved from white granite. Time had softened its edges. Tree roots embraced its base. Snow had drifted through cracks above, covering the floor in untouched white. Around the shrine stood weathered statues of wolves unlike any she had ever seen. Their faces carried neither anger nor savagery. Only watchfulness. Only loyalty. Only peace. Ilara stepped closer. The air itself felt different here. Warmer. Alive. She brushed snow from the altar with trembling hands. Ancient writing appeared beneath the frost. She could not read the language. Yet somehow, she understood its meaning. Not through words. Through feeling. A promise. A bond. A covenant. Humans and wolves had once stood together here. Not as masters and beasts. As protectors of the same land. The realization settled gently inside her heart. How had such a bond been forgotten? What had happened to destroy it? She reached into her satchel. Her fingers touched nothing except empty cloth where her scarf had once rested. A faint smile crossed her face. She had forgotten. The scarf belonged to the silver wolf now. Instead, she placed both hands upon the ancient stone. The crystal suddenly pulsed with brilliant blue light. Startled, she lifted it. The symbols carved across its surface began to glow. Thin streams of light spread across the altar like flowing water. Lines hidden beneath centuries of frost awakened one after another. The chamber trembled. Dust drifted from the ceiling. Outside, somewhere beyond the mountain, wolves began to howl. One voice. Then many. The carvings surrounding the shrine answered. Silver symbols raced across the stone floor in widening circles. Every wolf statue seemed almost alive beneath the dancing light. Ilara stepped backward. What is happening? The chamber offered no answer. Only light. Then, a single image appeared above the altar. Not solid. Not entirely real. A vision woven from shimmering blue mist. She saw wolves running beside armored men through forests filled with sunlight. Children laughing as wolf pups played among them. Villages built without walls because nothing threatened them. The seasons changing together. Life moving in harmony. Then everything changed. Smoke. Fire. Screams. Steel. Men wearing royal banners turned their swords against the wolves they had once protected. The forest burned. The great packs scattered. The shrine darkened. The vision shattered. The chamber fell silent once again. Ilara remained frozen where she stood. Her chest tightened. The old stories had never spoken of betrayal. Only monsters. Only dangerous beasts. Someone had rewritten history. A quiet sound reached her ears. She turned. The silver wolf stood at the entrance. It had arrived so silently she had not heard a single step. Its golden eyes rested on her. Then it walked toward the shrine. Slowly. Respectfully. When it reached the altar, it lowered its head until its nose touched the ancient stone. The crystal answered with another pulse of light. The wolf looked back at Ilara. For the first time, she noticed tears glistening in its eyes. Not from pain. From memory. She knelt beside it. Without fear. Without hesitation. Her hand rested gently upon its shoulder. I don't understand everything, she whispered. But I know this place mattered. The wolf closed its eyes. For one quiet moment, neither human nor animal moved. The silence felt sacred. Far away, beyond mountains hidden beneath endless snow, a lone figure stood upon a cliff overlooking the northern wilderness. His cloak, woven from white wolf fur, moved gently in the icy wind. Long silver hair rested across broad shoulders marked by countless battles. His face carried the quiet strength of someone who had endured many winters. Before him knelt the oldest wolves of the hidden packs. None dared interrupt the silence. The Alpha King slowly opened his eyes. For decades he had waited. For decades the sacred shrine had remained asleep. Now, he felt it. A warm pulse spread through the ancient bond like the first heartbeat after a long sleep. Someone had awakened the covenant. Someone with neither greed nor ambition. Someone whose kindness had reached where armies never could. His weathered hand rested against the stone beside him. "The promise lives," he murmured softly. One of the elder wolves lifted its head. "Shall we bring her here, my king?" The Alpha King looked toward the distant forest. "No." His voice carried neither command nor pride. "She found the path herself." A faint smile touched his face. "Now, we must earn her trust." Back inside the hidden shrine, peace lasted only a heartbeat longer. A raven burst through the broken ceiling high above. Its frightened cry echoed across the chamber. The silver wolf's ears snapped upright. Its body became rigid. A deep growl rolled quietly through its chest. Ilara heard it too. Not the raven. Something else. Metal. The distant clatter of armor. Boots crushing snow. Voices. Many voices. The hunters had found the mountain. Outside the hidden entrance, Lord Garrick's men emerged from the trees one after another, swords gleaming beneath the fading winter sun. Captain Rowan knelt beside fresh wolf tracks leading directly into the mountain passage. He smiled without warmth. "They're inside." Behind him, Lord Garrick slowly removed one leather glove and rested his hand upon the hilt of his sword. "So," he whispered, staring toward the hidden entrance, "the wolves have finally led us home." Deep inside the sanctuary, the crystal in Ilara's hands flashed once more. Then every light in the ancient chamber went dark. Darkness swallowed the shrine so completely that even the glow from Ilara's lantern seemed afraid to remain. The blue light inside the crystal vanished. The ancient symbols faded beneath the stone floor one after another until only cold grey rock remained. Silence settled over the chamber. Then came another sound. The unmistakable scrape of steel against stone. The silver wolf turned sharply toward the tunnel entrance. Every muscle beneath its shimmering coat tightened. Its ears flattened. A low growl rolled through the chamber, deep enough to vibrate beneath Ilara's boots. The hunters were close. Very close. Snow drifted into the tunnel behind them as heavy footsteps echoed through the passage. Captain Rowan raised one gloved hand. "Spread out." His voice bounced from the stone walls. "Nothing leaves this mountain." Torches flared to life, their orange light chasing away the darkness. Shadows stretched across the tunnel like reaching hands. Ilara's heartbeat pounded in her ears. She looked around desperately. The shrine offered no hidden escape. The chamber was surrounded by solid stone. Only the tunnel remained. Only the hunters. The silver wolf nudged her arm. Hard. Its golden eyes locked onto hers. "Go." The message needed no words. "No." She whispered the answer before she even realized she had spoken. The wolf pushed her again. More urgently this time. It took one step toward the tunnel, placing itself between Ilara and the approaching soldiers. Its posture had changed completely. Gone was the wounded animal she had rescued beside the frozen stream. Now it stood tall. Protective. Fearless. A guardian. Voices echoed closer. "I see light. Move. They're ahead." The wolf looked back one final time. Its eyes softened. Almost pleading. Ilara's fingers tightened around the crystal. She understood. If the hunters found them together, neither would escape. But if they chased her, the wolf might still disappear into the mountains. A painful knot tightened inside her chest. She remembered another winter. Years ago. Her father lying pale beneath blankets while fever stole his strength. The village healer had arrived too late because others had chosen safety over helping a stranger caught in the storm. Her father never blamed them. He had simply smiled weakly and whispered, "Kindness only matters when it costs something." She had never forgotten those words. Now they returned as clearly as if he stood beside her. The silver wolf growled again. The first armored soldier appeared at the far end of the chamber. Torchlight spilled across ancient stone. "There!" More soldiers rushed forward. The wolf lunged. Not to attack. To block the narrow passage. Its powerful body slammed into the first hunter, sending him crashing backward into two others. Torches tumbled across the floor. Flames scattered over melting snow. Chaos exploded inside the shrine. Take the beast. Don't let it escape. Steel flashed through the darkness. The wolf twisted between spears with astonishing speed, but there were too many. One blade sliced across its shoulder. Another struck the stone beside its head, sending sparks flying. Ilara's hands trembled. If she ran now, the hunters would keep chasing the wolf. If she stayed, perhaps. An idea formed. Dangerous. Painful. The only chance. She stepped into the open. Stop. Her voice rang through the chamber. The soldiers hesitated. Even the wolf froze. Captain Rowan pushed through the line of hunters. His scarred face showed little emotion. So? His eyes settled upon Ilara. The herbal girl. She slowly raised both hands. I'm the one you want. The captain studied her carefully. Behind him, the silver wolf crouched low, ready to spring again. Rowan noticed. So that's why the beast protects you. Ilara swallowed. I'll come willingly. The wolf barked sharply. A desperate sound. She dared not look at it. If you let the wolf leave. The chamber fell silent. Captain Rowan considered the offer. Lord Garrick stepped forward from the tunnel entrance. His black cloak swept across the stone floor. Unlike his soldiers, he did not look surprised. He looked satisfied. I wondered what kind of woman would earn the loyalty of royal wolves. His cold eyes rested on Ilara. You disappoint me. She frowned. I expected a witch. He smiled faintly. Instead, I find a fool. His gaze shifted toward the silver wolf. Very well. He slowly removed his sword from its sheath. If the beast leaves. He pointed the blade toward Ilara. You become my prisoner. The silver wolf growled louder. It stepped closer. Ilara slowly shook her head. Please. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. Go. The wolf refused. She took one careful step toward it. Its ears lowered. Her fingers rested gently against its neck. The familiar blue scarf still lay beneath the heavy iron collar. She smiled despite the tears gathering in her eyes. You've already survived once. Her voice trembled. Don't throw your life away for mine. For several endless seconds nothing moved. Then, the silver wolf leaned its forehead gently against hers. Its warm breath drifted across her frozen cheeks. It remained there only a heartbeat. Before turning, with one powerful leap it disappeared through a narrow crack hidden behind the shrine. Several soldiers shouted. Rowan instinctively moved after it. No! Lord Garrick's voice stopped them. Every hunter froze. He watched the wolf vanish into darkness. It will lead us where we wish to go. His smile widened. And now? He looked at Ilara. We have the perfect bait. Heavy iron shackles closed around her wrists. Outside, evening had settled across Frostpine Forest. Snow continued falling in slow, silent flakes. The hunters marched south through the trees with Ilara walking among them. No one spoke. Only boots crunching through snow disturbed the quiet forest. She looked back only once. The hidden entrance had already disappeared beneath drifting snow. As though the mountain wished to erase every trace of what had happened. Hours later the dark walls of Blackstone Fortress rose above the valley. Massive towers pierced the cloudy sky. Braziers burned along the walls. Guards stood watch beneath banners embroidered with the royal lion. The fortress looked strong, cold, unwelcoming. The great gates groaned open. Villagers working nearby paused to watch. Some lowered their eyes when they saw the shackled young woman. Others whispered. No one dared interfere. Inside, the fortress smelled of smoke, damp stone, and hot iron. Servants hurried through narrow corridors carrying firewood and heavy pots of stew. Soldiers laughed around blazing fireplaces. Life continued as though nothing unusual had happened. Only Ilara noticed the mounted wolf heads decorating the great hall. Dozens of them. Grey, black, brown. Each frozen forever in silent death. Her stomach tightened. Lord Garrick noticed where she was looking. A reminder. he said calmly. That fear keeps kingdoms safe. Ilara said nothing. She simply looked away. Her prison cell lay beneath the fortress. The air was damp. Water dripped steadily from the ceiling. A narrow window no wider than her hand allowed only a thin ribbon of moonlight to reach the floor. The iron door slammed shut behind her. Footsteps faded. Silence returned. She slowly sat against the cold stone wall. For the first time since entering the shrine, she allowed herself to cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, only quiet tears slipping down tired cheeks. She wondered whether the silver wolf had escaped, whether it had reached home, whether she had made the right choice. The crystal still rested secretly inside her sleeve. The soldiers had never searched her carefully. She pulled it into her hands. Its surface remained dark, cold, lifeless. She sighed. So it's over. A gentle voice answered from the darkness beyond the bars. I don't believe it is. Ilara looked up. An old man stood in the corridor carrying a wooden bucket. His grey beard reached almost to his chest. Simple servant's clothes hung loosely from his thin frame. Unlike the guards, kindness rested quietly in his eyes. He glanced both ways before stepping closer. I brought bread. He slid a small loaf beneath the bars. And hot broth. The warm smell filled the little cell. Ilara whispered her thanks. The old man smiled. My name is Thomas. You shouldn't help me. He shrugged softly. I've lived long enough to know the difference between prisoners. He looked toward the stairs. And innocent people. Before leaving, he leaned closer. Be careful what you say around Lord Garrick. His voice became almost silent. He isn't hunting wolves. Ilara frowned. What do you mean? The old man's expression darkened. Years ago. He hesitated. I worked in the Royal Archives. He spent decades searching for something hidden beyond Frostpine. What? The wolf crown. The words barely left his lips. A relic older than the kingdom itself. They say whoever wears it commands every wolf in the north. Ilara's heartbeat quickened. The stories are true. I don't know. Thomas shook his head. But Garrick believes they are. He straightened as footsteps echoed down the corridor. I've already said too much. The old servant disappeared into the shadows just as two guards approached. Late that night, Lord Garrick stood alone inside his private chamber. Maps covered the walls. Old scrolls lay scattered across a massive oak table. Candles burned low. He stared at a faded drawing showing a crown shaped from silver branches and wolf fangs. Beneath it someone had written in ancient ink. The wolf crown chooses only one who is accepted by the covenant. Garrick's fingers tightened around the parchment. It should have chosen me. His voice carried years of bitterness. I conquered villages. I cleared forests. I hunted every royal beast I could find. And still. He slammed his fist onto the table. Nothing. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Captain Rowan entered. The wolf escaped. I know. Rowan frowned. We can still hunt it. Garrick slowly smiled. No. He walked toward the window overlooking the moonlit mountains. It isn't the wolf I'm waiting for. His reflection stared back from the glass. It will return. Rowan remained silent. It returned once. Garrick whispered. It will return again. And when it does. He looked toward the prison beneath the fortress. It will bring its king. Far beyond Blackstone Fortress. Beyond frozen rivers. Beyond cliffs where no human road had ever reached. The silver wolf ran through the blizzard without slowing. Blood stained the snow where its wounded shoulder brushed against icy branches. Its breathing grew heavier. Still it climbed. Higher. Farther. Until the mountains opened into a hidden valley untouched by human hands. Moonlight poured across towering pines. Ancient stone pillars circled a vast sanctuary carved into the heart of the mountain. Hundreds of wolves lifted their heads as the silver wolf entered. None spoke. None moved. They simply watched. At the center of the valley stood a lone figure beside a frozen lake. He wore no crown, no jeweled robes, only weathered armor beneath a white fur cloak. Scars crossed his hands. His silver hair moved gently in the mountain wind. The wolves bowed their heads as he turned. The silver wolf staggered the final few steps, then collapsed before him. Without hesitation, the Alpha King knelt in the snow. His strong hands gently touched the blue scarf still wrapped beneath the royal collar. His calm expression changed for the first time in many years. Not because of the blood, not because of the wounds, but because he understood exactly what had happened. He closed his eyes for one long moment, then rose slowly to his feet. The entire valley fell silent. When he finally spoke, even the wind seemed to listen. "Gather every pack." Hundreds of wolves stood at once. The Covenant has found its guardian. His silver eyes turned toward the distant southern horizon where a faint glow marked Blackstone Fortress. And she stands alone. Dawn arrived quietly. The first light crept over the frozen hills like pale gold spilled across endless fields of snow. Frost clung to every stone of Blackstone Fortress, turning its dark walls into towers wrapped in silver. Smoke rose from dozens of chimneys, and the guards along the battlements stamped their boots against the cold, complaining about another bitter morning. None of them noticed the ravens. One after another, black birds settled upon the fortress walls. They did not caw. They simply watched. Beyond the southern fields, villagers began arriving with wagons loaded with grain, firewood, salted fish, and sacks of barley. They greeted one another quietly as they entered through the great gate, unaware that something far older than the kingdom itself was already moving through the mountains. Deep beneath the fortress, Ilara had not slept. The small bowl of broth Thomas had brought sat untouched beside her bed of straw. Moonlight had long faded from the narrow window above, replaced now by a strip of pale morning sky. She held the crystal inside both hands. For hours it had remained cold, lifeless. Now, a faint warmth spread through her palms. She looked down. Deep within its clear center, a single blue spark flickered. Once. Then again. It was alive. Her heart quickened. Not with certainty. With hope. A gentle smile touched her tired face. "You came back," she whispered, though she did not know whether she was speaking to the crystal or to the wolf. Footsteps echoed through the corridor. Heavy. Purposeful. The iron door swung open. Captain Rowan stood outside with 4 soldiers behind him. "Lord Garrick wishes to see you." The chains around her wrists were removed only to be replaced by fresh iron cuffs connected with a longer chain. She followed without resistance. The fortress above bustled with morning activity. Servants hurried through the kitchens carrying warm loaves of bread whose scent filled the halls. Blacksmiths hammered glowing steel in the courtyard. Stable boys brushed frost from horses while soldiers sharpened swords beneath covered walkways. Everything looked ordinary. Yet Ilara noticed something strange. People seemed uneasy. Conversations stopped when the wind shifted. Workers glanced nervously toward the northern mountains. Even the horses tossed their heads and snorted uneasily. Animals often sensed danger long before people did. Inside the great hall, Lord Garrick stood before the enormous fireplace. Maps covered the long table beside him. Wooden markers stretched across the forests north of the fortress. Red pins marked old hunting camps. Black pins marked recent wolf sightings. He did not turn immediately. Instead, he watched the flames. "I've spent half my life chasing stories." His voice remained calm. "They called me foolish." He finally looked at Ilara. "They said the Alpha King was nothing more than a bedtime tale." He smiled without warmth. "But stories have an irritating habit." His fingers rested upon one of the maps. "Of hiding the truth." Ilara remained silent. Garrick walked slowly around her. "You've been inside the sanctuary." She said nothing. "You've seen things no one else has." Still she remained quiet. His patience thinned. "Tell me where it is." "I can't." "You mean you won't?" She met his eyes. "I wouldn't lead anyone there." For a long moment neither spoke. Then Garrick laughed softly. "Compassion." He shook his head. It clouds judgment. He stepped closer. You think the wolves are innocent? His expression hardened. They're powerful. They should belong to the kingdom. No, Ilara answered quietly. They belong to themselves. The room became very still. Rowan shifted uneasily. Several guards exchanged nervous glances. Garrick's smile vanished. Take her to the East Tower. Rowan frowned. My lord. The wolves will come. His eyes never left Ilara. And I want them to see exactly what happens to those they try to protect. The East Tower stood higher than every other part of Blackstone Fortress. Wind screamed around its narrow stone balconies. Snow whipped through the air in white ribbons. From there Ilara could see nearly the entire valley. Frozen rivers wound through forests that stretched toward distant mountains hidden beneath clouds. Beautiful. Silent. Empty. She was chained to a thick wooden post upon the tower platform. Not cruelly. Deliberately. Visible from every direction. Hours passed. The cold slowly numbed her fingers. Clouds drifted across the pale winter sky. Nothing happened. Below, guards slowly relaxed. Some laughed. Others wagered that no wolves would appear. Even Garrick began to look impatient. Then, one horse screamed. Not a frightened whinny. A cry of pure terror. Every head turned. The animal reared violently inside the stable yard, snapping its tether before bolting through the open gate. Other horses followed. Dogs began barking wildly. Ravens burst into the sky all at once. The wind changed. It carried a sound. Long, deep, ancient. A single wolf howl echoed across the valley. Then another answered. And another. Within seconds, the mountains themselves seemed to sing. Thousands of voices rolled through the snow-covered wilderness. Not chaotic. United. Every guard on the wall froze. Captain Rowan climbed the battlements and stared north. His face lost all color. My lord. He barely recognized his own voice. You should see this. Garrick stepped onto the wall. His confident expression disappeared. Far across the frozen valley. Movement. Grey shapes flowed between the trees. Hundreds. Then more. White wolves emerged from snow-covered ridges. Black wolves crossed frozen rivers. Silver wolves descended from rocky cliffs. They moved with calm purpose. No wild sprint. No frenzy. Only disciplined silence. Like an army older than kingdoms. Within minutes the fortress stood surrounded. Not by soldiers. By wolves. Thousands of them. None attacked. None snarled. They simply waited. Every pair of eyes faced the fortress. Waiting. Watching. The valley became so quiet that falling snow could almost be heard. One by one, villagers emerged from nearby homes. No one ran. No one screamed. Instead, they stared. An elderly shepherd slowly removed his cap. A young mother pulled her child close but did not retreat. Farmers lowered their tools. Something inside them recognized that this was no ordinary pack. This was history returning. Lord Garrick drew his sword. Archers. Rows of bowmen rushed onto the walls. Loose on my command. Hundreds of arrows pointed toward the wolves below. Still, the wolves did not move. Then the crowd parted. From the center of the great pack emerged a lone figure walking through the snow. Tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a white fur cloak that moved gently behind him. Silver hair rested across weathered armor marked by countless winters. He carried no shield. No raised weapon. Only quiet authority. The wolves lowered their heads as he passed. Even the wind seemed softer around him. Ilara looked at him for the first time. She immediately understood. Not because of his appearance. Because every living creature nearby responded to him. The Alpha King had come. His silver eyes lifted toward the tower. They found Ilara immediately. For a brief moment. The entire world seemed to disappear. No fortress. No soldiers. Only two strangers whose lives had already changed one another without ever meeting. He placed one hand over his heart. A silent gesture of gratitude. Ilara's eyes filled with tears. she answered with the smallest nod. Lord Garrick stepped forward. So? His voice echoed from the battlements. The ghost finally leaves his forest. The Alpha King looked toward him calmly. His expression held neither hatred nor fear. You hold someone who belongs to neither your prison. His voice carried across the valley with remarkable clarity. Nor your ambition. Garrick laughed. She belongs wherever I decide. The Alpha King's gaze never wavered. You still do not understand. What? You cannot own loyalty. Snow drifted gently between them. It is given. Garrick's jaw tightened. Enough. He raised his sword. Bring out the wolf. A heavy iron gate opened beneath the fortress. Several soldiers dragged a chained silver wolf into the courtyard. Its shoulder remained wrapped in blood-stained cloth. The familiar blue scarf still rested beneath the royal collar. Ilara's breath caught. The young guardian struggled to stand despite exhaustion. One soldier struck it with a spear shaft, forcing it onto its knees. A murmur spread through the villagers. Even some soldiers looked away. The Alpha King's eyes darkened. Not with rage. With sorrow. Garrick smiled. You came because of this creature. He pointed toward Ilara. And because of her. His sword slowly lowered toward the silver wolf's neck. Now choose. The guardian. He looked toward Ilara. Or the girl. The valley fell silent once more. Not a wolf moved. Not an arrow flew. Even the falling snow seemed to wait. And in that breathless silence, the crystal hidden beneath Ilara's sleeve began to shine brighter than it ever had before. The light began as little more than a heartbeat. Hidden beneath the sleeve of Ilara's worn cloak, the crystal released a faint blue glow that slipped between the links of her chains. At first, no one noticed. Every eye remained fixed upon Lord Garrick's raised sword and the exhausted silver wolf kneeling in the snow. The young guardian struggled to lift its head. Its breathing had become slow and uneven. Blood stained the white ground beneath its injured shoulder. Yet even now, its golden eyes searched only for one person. Ilara. Not for rescue. Not for comfort. Only to make certain she was still alive. A lump rose painfully in Ilara's throat. She remembered the first morning beside the frozen stream. The trembling body buried beneath snow. The scarf wrapped around shaking shoulders. She had believed she was saving an ordinary animal. Now she understood. Kindness had never chosen its destination. It had simply found the place where it was needed most. The crystal grew warmer. A second pulse spread through it. Blue light escaped through her fingers and drifted softly across the tower platform. One nearby guard frowned. What is that? Another leaned closer. My lord. But Garrick did not look away from the Alpha King. His voice rang across the valley. Kneel. The Alpha King remained still. I do not kneel before greed. Garrick's smile vanished. Then watch. He lifted the sword higher. The blade caught the pale winter sun. A single movement. That was all it would take. The silver wolf closed its eyes. Ilara felt something inside her break. Without thinking. Without calculating the cost. She threw herself forward. The chain around her wrists snapped tight as she leaped from the post. The old wood cracked beneath the sudden force. She fell from the platform, crashing hard onto the stone walkway below. Pain exploded through her shoulder. Her knees struck the frozen ground. The guards shouted in surprise. Still she struggled forward. Every movement tore against the iron cuffs. Her skin split where the chains bit into her wrists. Blood ran across the cold stone. She reached the edge of the stairway overlooking the courtyard. The soldiers below barely had time to react before she stumbled between Garrick and the chained wolf. She spread both arms. Breathing hard. Shaking from exhaustion. If you must strike. Her voice trembled. Strike me first. Silence. Absolute silence. Even Garrick seemed unable to move. The villagers stared. Captain Rowan slowly lowered his sword. Several young soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. No shield protected her. No weapon rested in her hands. Only compassion. The silver wolf looked up at her. Its ears lowered. A quiet whine escaped its throat. The sound carried through the courtyard like a child's cry. Garrick recovered first. You would die. His voice filled with disbelief. For an animal. Ilara slowly turned toward him. Snowflakes settled in her hair. One tear slipped quietly down her cheek. No, she answered softly. I would die. For a friend. The words drifted across the valley. Every wolf lifted its head. The crystal erupted. Blue light burst from between Ilara's hands with such brilliance that everyone shielded their eyes. The chains around her wrists glowed white. Ancient symbols raced across the iron before the metal shattered into countless sparkling fragments. The light spread across the courtyard. Across the fortress walls. Across every stone. Ancient carvings, hidden beneath centuries of dust, awakened one after another. Wolf symbols appeared beneath the castle itself. Old foundations older than Blackstone Fortress answered the crystal's call. The earth trembled. A deep sound echoed beneath everyone's feet. Not destruction. Recognition. The Covenant had awakened. The Alpha King slowly stepped forward. No wolf followed. No soldier stopped him. The great gates of the fortress swung open on their own with a long groan. The wolves remained outside. Patient. Disciplined. They had not come to conquer. Only to answer a promise. Blue light surrounded Ilara. Warmth flowed through her aching body. The wounds on her wrists closed. Not instantly. Gently. As though the ancient magic honored sacrifice instead of rewarding power. The Alpha King entered the courtyard alone. His boots left quiet prints across the snow. When he reached Ilara, he stopped several steps away. He lowered himself onto one knee. Not before a queen. Not before a ruler. Before kindness itself. The villagers gasped. Even Captain Rowan stared in disbelief. The Covenant recognizes you. The Alpha King's voice carried quiet reverence. You asked nothing. You expected nothing. And yet you gave everything. He rose slowly and turned toward the wounded silver wolf. The young guardian struggled to stand. Instead of bowing, it pressed its forehead gently against Ilara's hand. The faded blue scarf rested beneath its royal collar exactly where she had wrapped it days before. The Alpha King's fingers brushed the scarf with remarkable care. This, he said quietly, saved more than one life. Lord Garrick's laughter shattered the moment. Enough. His face twisted with fury. This trick changes nothing. He charged forward. Sword raised high. His blade flashed toward the Alpha King's back. Several guards cried out. Ilara turned. So did the silver wolf. With astonishing speed it lunged between them. Its injured body slammed into Garrick. The sword flew from his hand, spinning across the snow. The governor crashed heavily against the stone steps. Before he could rise, wolves poured silently through the open gates. Not attacking. Surrounding. A great white wolf stood before Garrick. Then another. Then 10 more. None touched him. None needed to. He looked around desperately. For the first time in many years. Lord Garrick understood fear. Real fear. Not fear of death. Fear of standing alone. He searched the faces of his own soldiers. Arrest them. No one moved. Captain Rowan slowly removed his helmet. It fell onto the snow with a dull sound. My lord. His tired voice echoed across the courtyard. I followed you because you promised to protect this kingdom. He looked toward Ilara. I never agreed to destroy it. One by one. Soldiers lowered their swords. Archers relaxed their bows. Servants stepped from the hallways. Blacksmiths. Stable hands. Kitchen workers. Villagers who had gathered outside the gates. They all looked toward Garrick. Not with hatred. With disappointment. The old governor backed away. No. His voice shook. You belong to me. No one answered. He turned to flee. The ancient stone beneath his feet suddenly gave way. Not collapsing. Opening. A circular pattern appeared beneath the snow where the Covenant had awakened. At its center lay a weathered stone tablet. Upon it rested an old crown. Not made of gold. Not covered in jewels. Silver branches intertwined with polished wolf fangs and tiny leaves shaped from crystal. The wolf crown. Its beauty came not from wealth, but from simplicity. Garrick rushed toward it. Greed burned brightly in his eyes. My crown. He reached out. The moment his fingers touched it, the silver branches darkened. The crown crumbled into grey ash. The wind carried the dust away. Gone. Forever. Garrick fell to his knees. No. His voice cracked. No. The Alpha King looked at him with quiet sadness. The crown was never a prize. It was a promise. You cannot steal what must be freely given. Royal riders arrived before sunset. Messengers had already reached the capital. Witnesses stepped forward. Villagers spoke of Garrick's cruelty. Soldiers confessed the governor's secret hunts. Old Thomas brought forgotten records from the royal archives, proving years of lies, illegal killings, and broken oaths. Justice, delayed for decades, finally found its path. Lord Garrick was stripped of every title before the gathered court. No wolf harmed him. No vengeance stained the snow. He was taken away by the very kingdom he had claimed to serve. As the gates closed behind him, no one looked back. Spring arrived slowly. Snow melted from the rooftops of Ashenvale. Rivers began singing beneath the morning sun once more. Wildflowers pushed through dark soil where winter had ruled for so long. Life returned. Children laughed in fields that had once echoed only with cold winds. Travelers crossed Frostpine Forest without fear. Not because wolves had disappeared. Because trust had returned. Ilara stood beside the ancient shrine deep within the mountains. Sunlight filtered through fresh green branches above. The frozen chamber she had first entered now glowed with quiet life. Moss covered the old stones. Clear water flowed gently around the altar. The Alpha King approached carrying something folded across both hands. Her blue scarf. Carefully washed. Carefully repaired. Every worn thread had been strengthened, but none of its age had been hidden. It belongs to you. Ilara smiled softly. It belonged to all of us. Instead of placing it around her own shoulders, she knelt before the silver wolf. The young guardian sat patiently. She wrapped the scarf around its neck exactly as she had on that cold winter morning. The wolf gently touched its nose against her cheek. The Alpha King smiled. It was the first unguarded smile anyone in the valley had ever seen upon his face. The old stories called this wolf the last heir of the guardian bloodline. His voice carried warmth instead of sorrow now. The final child born to those who once protected the covenant. He looked toward Ilara. It survived because compassion found it before death did. The villagers gathered that evening beneath towering pines where long tables overflowed with warm bread, roasted vegetables, fresh river fish, honey cakes, and steaming herbal tea. There were no thrones. No walls dividing kings from common people. The Alpha King sat beside shepherds. Children played with wolf pups beneath blooming trees. Old songs forgotten for generations filled the forest once more. When the stars finally appeared above Ashenvale, Thomas raised a wooden cup. To kindness. Everyone followed. The words echoed softly through the trees. Not loudly. Not as a celebration of victory. As gratitude. Years passed. Children grew into adults hearing the tale of the girl who owned almost nothing but changed the fate of a kingdom with one simple act of mercy. No storyteller ever began with crowns. Or battles. Or ancient magic. They always began the same way. With a freezing morning. A lonely girl. A trembling silver wolf. And a faded blue scarf offered without expecting anything in return. Even now, travelers crossing Frostpine Forest during the first snowfall sometimes pause when they glimpse two figures standing upon a distant ridge. One is a tall king wrapped in white fur. The other is a silver wolf wearing an old blue scarf that flutters gently in the winter wind. They watch over the forests in peaceful silence. Not as rulers guarding a kingdom, but as friends protecting a promise. For the greatest legends are rarely born from strength. They begin with a quiet choice. A single act of kindness. And a heart willing to stay warm, even after giving away its only scarf.